The bridge of the Velkari diplomatic vessel Harmony's light hummed with quiet efficiency. Captain Zekther stood at the command platform, his 4 eyes scanning the holographic display that showed the small blue planet ahead. Earth, they called it, the third planet from an unremarkable yellow star in a backwater region of the galaxy. "Captain, we are approaching the optimal communication range," announced Navigator Telwyn, her slender fingers dancing across the control panel. "Shall I transmit the standard greeting?" Zekther clicked his mandibles thoughtfully. In his 300 cycles of service to the Galactic Council, he had overseen first contact with 17 species. This would be his 18th, and he felt the familiar mixture of anticipation and protocol-driven calm. The species called themselves humans, and from what little data they had gathered from intercepted electromagnetic transmissions, they seemed typical of most pre-warp civilizations. "Proceed with the greeting," Zekther commanded. "Standard diplomatic protocols. Let us welcome these humans to the greater galactic community." What neither Zekther nor his crew knew was that deep in the Council's archives, sealed behind layers of forgotten bureaucracy and ancient warning labels, lay documents that mentioned humans, not as a newly discovered species, but as something far older and far more terrifying. The documents, written in dead languages by extinct civilizations, spoke of creatures from a world so hostile that merely surviving childhood marked one as a hardened warrior. They told of beings who could track prey across impossible distances, who healed from wounds that would kill most species, who could adapt to nearly any environment given time. The warning spoke of reflexes honed by evolution on a planet where death lurked in every shadow, and of minds capable of pattern recognition and tactical thinking that bordered on precognition. But these documents lay buried and forgotten. The Council had dismissed them centuries ago as the paranoid ravings of primitive civilizations encountering their first hostile competitors. Humans, they believed, were myths, Boogamen stories told to frighten young ones into obedience. 3,000 kilometers above Earth's surface, aboard the orbital defense station Liberty, Commander Jake Morrison stared at the blip on his tactical display. 32 years of military service had taught him to trust his instincts, and right now those instincts were screaming at him. "Lieutenant Chen, status report," he barked, his weathered face reflecting the glow of multiple screens. Lieutenant Amy Chen looked up from her station, her fingers still flying across her keyboard. "Sir, the unidentified vessel is maintaining position just outside standard orbital range. It's big, Commander. At least 3 times the size of anything we've ever put in space. Scans show an energy signature we've never seen before. Are we sure it's not one of ours? Chinese? Russian? Someone's secret project we weren't briefed on?" Morrison knew it was a futile question even as he asked it. No nation on Earth had the technology to build something like what his sensors were showing him. "Negative, sir. This is nothing from Earth." Chen paused, then added quietly, "Sir, I think we need to consider the possibility that we're not alone anymore." Morrison felt his heart rate increase, felt the familiar rush of adrenaline that had kept him alive through 2 wars and countless skirmishes. His hand unconsciously moved to rest near the weapons control panel. "All stations, battle-ready status. Weapons hot but hold fire. Communications, are we receiving anything from them?" Communications Officer Danny Wright nodded vigorously. "Yes, sir, we're receiving what appears to be a transmission. It's on multiple frequencies simultaneously. The pattern is definitely artificial, definitely intended as communication." "Can we decode it?" "Working on it now, sir. The AI is analyzing patterns, cross-referencing with mathematical constants, fundamental physics. Give me 5 minutes." Those 5 minutes felt like 5 hours. Morrison walked the length of the command center, checking each station, each officer. His crew was good, the best Earth had to offer, but they were about to face something none of them had trained for. None of humanity had trained for this. "Got it," Wright suddenly shouted. "Sir, the AI has cracked the basic structure, putting it through translation now." A synthesized voice filled the command center, speaking in clear English. "Greetings, inhabitants of the third planet. We are representatives of the Galactic Council, an assembly of civilized species dedicated to peace and mutual cooperation. We come in friendship and welcome you to the greater community of intelligent life. Please respond if you can understand this message." The command center fell silent. Every officer stared at Morrison, waiting for his decision. He took a deep breath, then nodded to Wright. "Open a channel. Let's talk to our new friends." 20 minutes later, Morrison was in direct communication with Captain Zecthor. The alien's image appeared on the main view screen, and Morrison suppressed his initial shock at the creature's appearance. 4 eyes, mandibles, skin that seemed to shift colors slightly with emotion or thought. Despite the alien features, Morrison recognized intelligence and, he hoped, genuine peaceful intent. "Captain Zecthor, I am Commander Jake Morrison, officer in charge of this defense station. On behalf of Earth, I welcome you, though I'll admit you've given us quite a surprise." Zecthor's mandibles clicked in what the translation software interpreted as pleased satisfaction. "Commander Morrison, the surprise is mutual, I assure you. We had no idea your species had achieved orbital infrastructure. Your development is proceeding remarkably quickly." "We're a determined species," Morrison replied carefully. "May I ask, Captain, what brings the Galactic Council to Earth?" "Standard First Contact Protocol," Zecthor explained. "We detected your electromagnetic emissions approximately 73 of your years ago. After studying your transmissions and determining that you had achieved what we consider basic sentience benchmarks, the Council authorized this diplomatic mission. We wish to offer your species membership in the Council, access to our accumulated knowledge, and the opportunity to trade and interact with thousands of other civilized worlds." Morrison felt a thrill run through him. Thousands of other worlds, accumulated knowledge spanning millennia, the opportunities were staggering. "That's an incredible offer, Captain. I'm certain my superiors will want to discuss this at length. However, I need to ask about your intentions. Your ship is heavily armed. Should we be concerned?" Zecthor's skin shifted to a lighter hue, which the software suggested indicated embarrassment or apology. "A reasonable question, Commander. The weapons are purely defensive, standard for any vessel traveling through uncharted space. We have encountered hostile species in the past, though such encounters are rare. I assure you, we mean no harm to your world." "I appreciate that, Captain. However, I'm going to need to verify your intentions. I'm ordering a small vessel to approach your ship for a visual inspection. Your cooperation would be appreciated." Zecthor hesitated, his mandibles clicking rapidly. "Commander, I must inform you that our defensive systems operate automatically. If your vessel approaches too quickly or displays what our systems interpret as hostile intent, they will activate without my direct control. I would hate for a tragic misunderstanding to damage our first contact." Morrison felt the familiar tightening in his gut that preceded combat. Something in Zecthor's tone, something in the way the alien phrased his warning, set off alarm bells in his mind. He had heard similar warnings before from opponents who thought themselves superior, who expected easy victory. "Understood, Captain. My pilot will approach slowly and signal our peaceful intent at every stage. I'm sure there won't be any misunderstandings." Morrison cut the communication and turned to Chen. "Lieutenant, prep a shuttle. I want Sam Carter piloting. Brief him on the situation and tell him to be careful, but I want eyes on that ship." "Understood, sir." "But Commander, if their defensive systems are as automated as they claim, shouldn't we be more cautious?" Morrison's eyes hardened. "Lieutenant, I've spent 32 years learning to read people, and yes, I know Zecthor isn't a person in the traditional sense, but the same principles apply. That captain is nervous about something. He's not worried we'll find weapons. He's worried about how we'll react when we find them. I want to know what they're really carrying on that ship." Aboard the Harmony's light, Zecthor watched the small human shuttle approach on his displays. His skin had shifted to a dark, worried hue that his crew recognized all too well. "Captain, the human vessel is approaching slowly, exactly as they indicated," Navigator Telwyn reported. "All scans show it to be unarmed except for what appears to be minimal defensive capabilities. Maintain full sensor lock. The moment they deviate from their approach vector, I want to know about it." Zecthor paused, then added, "How long until we can complete the first contact protocols and return to Council space?" "At least 3 planetary rotations, Captain. Standard procedures require extensive cultural exchange before formal membership can be offered. Zecthar clicked his mandibles in frustration. Something about these humans made him uneasy. Perhaps it was the speed with which they had responded to his hail. Perhaps it was the obvious military nature of their orbital station. Or perhaps it was something deeper, something he couldn't quite identify. The shuttle approached to within 100 meters, its pilot, Sam Carter, carefully navigating the massive alien vessel. Carter had been flying for 20 years, including combat missions in 3 different theaters, and he had never seen anything like the ship before him. Liberty, this is Shuttle Romeo 5. Beginning visual inspection of the alien vessel. So far everything matches what our sensors showed. Hull appears to be some kind of composite material, definitely nothing we've ever developed. I'm seeing what look like weapons ports along the starboard side, but they appear to be retracted or inactive. Romeo 5, continue your inspection. Take your time and get us good images. Carter maneuvered the shuttle along the length of the alien ship, his cameras recording every detail. As he moved toward the aft section, something caught his eye. A section of the hull that didn't quite match the rest, a seam that suggested hidden compartments. Liberty, I'm seeing something odd here. There's a section of the hull that looks like it's designed to open. Could be a loading bay, could be something else. Adjusting position for a better look. Carter adjusted his thrusters, moving closer to get a better view. What happened next occurred in less than 2 seconds, but those 2 seconds would change the course of human history. The Harmony's Light's automated defensive systems, designed by a species whose reflexes operated at 1/10 the speed of human reflexes, interpreted Carter's sudden movement as an attack vector. Weapons ports snapped open, energy weapons charged, and targeting systems locked on. Carter's hands moved before his conscious mind registered the threat. Years of combat flying, thousands of hours of muscle memory training, and the reflexes of an apex predator species kicked in. His fingers danced across the controls, firing maneuvering thrusters in a pattern that would have been impossible for most species to execute. The shuttle twisted, rolled, and dove away from the weapon's lock in a maneuver that looked more like the evasion pattern of a frightened bird than anything a spacecraft should be able to do. Energy beams cut through the space where his shuttle had been a fraction of a second earlier. Liberty. They're firing, taking evasive action. Carter's voice was remarkably calm despite the adrenaline flooding his system. Aboard the Liberty, Morrison watched the tactical display in shock as the alien ship opened fire. Then his shock transformed into cold fury. All stations, weapons free, target their weapon systems. Do not destroy that ship, but make sure they understand that was a mistake. What happened next was something the Galactic Council had not witnessed in 3,000 years. Human weapons, designed by a species that had spent its entire evolutionary history either hunting or being hunted, unleashed with precision that bordered on artistic. Railgun rounds, accelerated to impossible speeds, struck every weapon port on the Harmony's Light with pinpoint accuracy. The alien ship's shields flared and failed under the kinetic assault. Point defense lasers designed to track and destroy incoming missiles carved surgical strikes across the ship's surface, disabling targeting sensors and communication arrays. The entire engagement lasted 12 seconds. When it was over, the Harmony's Light drifted helpless, its weapons disabled, its shields collapsed, its communication systems barely functional. The ship itself remained intact, the crew unharmed but thoroughly defeated. Carter brought his shuttle back around, his hands still steady on the controls despite the near-death experience. Liberty, Romeo 5, I'm okay. The alien ship appears disabled but intact. Orders. Morrison took a deep breath, forcing himself to think past the combat rush. Return to base, Sam. Well done. Communications, restore contact with the alien captain. Let's see if we can salvage this situation. Aboard the Harmony's Light, Zecthar stood frozen at his command platform, his skin cycling through colors of shock and disbelief that his crew had never seen before. Around him, officers slowly recovered from their own shock-checking systems and trying to understand what had just happened. Captain, Telwyn's voice shook as she spoke. All weapon systems are offline. Shields are collapsed. We are completely defenseless. Captain, I have never seen reflexes like that. The human pilot evaded our targeting lock before the first shot was even fired, and their return fire, it was precise beyond anything I've ever encountered. They could have destroyed us, but they chose to disable us instead. Zecther's mind raced through the implications. His defensive systems had activated automatically, yes, but the human response had been instantaneous and overwhelmingly effective. The weapons they had used, kinetic weapons and directed energy, were primitive by Council standards, yet they had penetrated his shields and disabled his ship with surgical precision. Communications, restore contact with Commander Morrison, and someone access the deep archives, search for any references to a species called humans. Search the sealed sections if necessary. I need to know if we've encountered these beings before. Morrison's face appeared on the view screen, and Zecther noted with some trepidation that the human's expression was cold and controlled. Captain Zecther, I'm going to assume that was your automated defense system acting without your authorization, as you warned me. However, you fired on an unarmed shuttle conducting a peaceful inspection that you had agreed to allow. You will understand if I'm now somewhat skeptical of your peaceful intentions. Zecther's mandibles clicked frantically. Commander Morrison, I assure you, I did not order that attack. My defensive systems activated automatically, exactly as I feared they might. I take full responsibility for this incident. Please accept my most sincere apologies and the apologies of the Galactic Council. I'm sure you understand, Captain, that I can't simply take your word for it now. You're going to remain where you are, disabled and under our guns, until representatives from Earth's government arrive to conduct formal negotiations. Do you have any objection to that? Zecther looked at his tactical display, at the readouts showing his disabled weapons and collapsed shields, at the human defense station bristling with weapons that had proven devastatingly effective. He clicked his mandibles in what humans would recognize as a bitter laugh. Commander, I don't believe I'm in a position to object to anything. 3 hours later, Zecther's communications officer approached him with a data tablet, her expression troubled. Captain, I found the references you requested. They were buried deep in the sealed archives, marked with the highest warning classifications. Sir, I think you need to read this immediately. Zecther took the tablet and began to read. As the words scrolled past, his skin shifted through every color of shock, fear, and dawning understanding. The document was ancient, written by the Corlathi civilization nearly 3,000 years ago, shortly before they mysteriously vanished from the galactic stage. Warning to future civilizations. If you encounter a species calling themselves humans from a world they name Earth in the Sol system, approach with extreme caution. These beings are survivors of a death world, a planet so hostile that merely reaching adulthood marks one as a hardened warrior. Human physiology is adapted for persistence hunting. They can track prey across impossible distances, can run for hours without rest, can survive injuries that would kill most species. Their healing capabilities are remarkable, their pain tolerance extraordinary. But their physical capabilities pale in comparison to their mental ones. Human brains are pattern recognition engines evolved to track, predict, and outsmart both prey and predators. Their capacity for tactical thinking, for adapting to new situations, for finding solutions to seemingly impossible problems, is unmatched in the galaxy. Most terrifying of all is their reaction time. Evolved on a world where hesitation meant death, humans can observe, decide, and act in fractions of the time it takes most species to simply perceive a threat. We encountered humans during our expansion into the outer regions. They had somehow spread to several worlds using primitive generation ships, establishing colonies where no species should have been able to survive. When we attempted to claim these worlds for the Corlathi Empire, the humans resisted. What followed was not war in any traditional sense. It was a master class in asymmetric warfare, in guerrilla tactics, in the absolute refusal to surrender even when all hope seemed lost. Every battle we won made them stronger. Every tactic we used, they adapted to and turned against us. They studied us, learned from us, and ultimately defeated us not through superior technology but through superior will and ingenuity. By the time we realized the true danger, it was too late. The humans had not only repelled our invasion but had begun to push into our territory. We sued for peace, offering them everything they asked for. To our surprise, they accepted. They wanted only to be left alone to pursue their own destiny. The Korlathi Empire never recovered from our encounter with humanity. The knowledge that we had been bested by what we considered a primitive species shattered our confidence, our belief in our own superiority. Within 2 generations, our civilization had collapsed from internal strife. Let this serve as a warning. If you encounter humans, treat them with the respect due to apex predators. Do not assume their primitive technology makes them weak. Do not assume their values of mercy and cooperation make them soft. Above all, do not threaten them, for they have survived by eliminating threats with brutal efficiency. We thought humans were legends, stories told to frighten the young. We learned too late that the only thing worse than discovering monsters are real is discovering they are both real and more terrifying than any story suggested. Zecthar set down the tablet with trembling hands. He looked at the tactical display, at the human defense station, at the readings showing dozens of weapons still trained on his helpless ship. He thought about the pilot who had evaded his targeting systems with reflexes that seemed almost supernatural. He thought about the precision of the return fire, disabling every weapon system without causing a single casualty. They could have destroyed us, he realized. They could have obliterated us in the first seconds of combat. Instead, they disabled us, demonstrating both their capability and their restraint. Communications, reopen the channel to Commander Morrison. I believe we need to have a much more honest conversation. Over the next 48 hours, as representatives from Earth's various governments arrived to conduct formal negotiations, Zecthar shared the ancient document with Morrison and his diplomatic counterparts. He watched their faces as they read about their own species through alien eyes, saw the mixture of pride and discomfort as they recognized both their capabilities and the fear those capabilities inspired. The chief negotiator for Earth, Director Patricia Coleman, addressed Zecthar during one of their private sessions. "Captain, I want you to understand something. Yes, we are capable of great violence. Our history is filled with wars, with conflicts that killed millions. But our history is also filled with cooperation, with sacrifice for the common good, with reaching out to help those in need even at great cost to ourselves. We are not looking for conquest. We don't want to dominate the galaxy. We want the same things most species want: to explore, to learn, to find our place in the universe. Yes, we will defend ourselves when threatened. Yes, we are very good at it, but we would much rather find peaceful solutions." Zechthar's mandibles clicked thoughtfully. "Director Coleman, I believe you. I have seen your restraint, but I think you need to understand how other species will perceive you. The document I showed you is not unique. As I searched deeper into the archives, I found similar warnings from half a dozen extinct civilizations. Every one of them encountered humans. Every one of them made the same mistake of underestimating your species. And every one of them ultimately fell, whether through direct conflict or through the psychological impact of realizing they were no longer the apex species they believed themselves to be." Coleman leaned forward. "Captain, are you saying the Council will refuse to accept us because we're too dangerous?" "No," Zecthar replied, his skin shifting to a color that suggested respect and wariness in equal measure. "I'm saying the Council will accept you because you're too dangerous to refuse. The galaxy has been at peace for 1,000 years, Director Coleman. We have achieved this through cooperation, through mutual respect, through careful diplomacy. But that peace has made us soft. We have forgotten what it means to face a true threat. There are dangers in the galaxy that we have chosen to avoid rather than confront, aggressive species in distant regions that we appease rather than challenge, ancient machines that we have quarantined but not eliminated. We tell ourselves we are being wise, being prudent. In truth, we have simply lost the will and capability to do what is necessary. Humanity has not lost that will. I suspect you never will. The galaxy needs that, even if the thought terrifies us." Morrison, who had been listening quietly to the exchange, spoke up. Captain, let me tell you something I learned a long time ago. The most dangerous warrior is not the one who seeks violence, but the one who is capable of it yet chooses peace. We are that warrior, Captain. We can be your worst nightmare or your most loyal ally. The choice is yours, but I suspect you've already made it. 6 months later, Commander Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Liberty, watching as the first official embassy ship from the Galactic Council approached Earth orbit. The ship was a diplomatic vessel, unarmed and escorted by human fighters as a gesture of respect and protection. The months since first contact had been transformative. Earth had accepted membership in the Galactic Council, but on terms that reflected the new reality of human presence in galactic affairs. Humanity would maintain their own military forces, would not be subject to restrictions on weapons development, and would have equal voting rights with species that had been spacefaring for millennia. The Council had accepted these terms without protest. Zecthor had been right. The galaxy needed humanity, even if the other species didn't fully understand why yet. Chen approached Morrison's station, a data tablet in her hands. "Commander, you're going to want to see this. It's a message from Council security. Apparently one of those aggressive species Zecthor mentioned, the ones they've been avoiding, just attacked a Council outpost on the frontier. They're calling for help." Morrison read the message, then smiled grimly. "Send a reply. Tell them the Earth Defense Fleet is ready to assist. And remind them that this is what allies do. They help each other face the things they can't face alone." As Chen moved to carry out his orders, Morrison looked out at the stars, at the vast galaxy that humanity was now part of. Somewhere out there, species that had thought humans were legends were about to learn a hard truth. Legends are often based on reality, and the reality of humanity was both more complex and more terrifying than any legend could capture. The day aliens learned humans were real was also the day they learned what it meant to have humanity as both protector and partner. The galaxy would never be the same. In the months that followed, human military doctrine began to spread through the Council's defensive forces. Not the weapons, not the technology, but something far more valuable: the human approach to warfare. The emphasis on adaptability, on creative thinking, on never accepting defeat even when victory seemed impossible. Young officers from dozens of species came to Earth to study at newly established military academies. They learned about persistence hunting, about asymmetric warfare, about the concept of winning not just battles but the hearts and minds of populations. They learned that technology alone did not win wars, that superior numbers did not guarantee victory, that the side that adapted fastest usually prevailed. They also learned about restraint, about rules of engagement, about the Geneva Conventions and the long history of humans trying to make warfare less brutal even as they perfected the art of violence. These lessons were perhaps even more important than the tactical ones. Captain Zecthor, promoted to admiral after his first contact mission, found himself working closely with human officers. His initial fear had transformed into genuine respect, and he had to admit, friendship. He had come to understand that the ancient warnings about humans, while accurate, were incomplete. Yes, humans were dangerous. Yes, they were apex predators from a death world. But they were also capable of great compassion, of sacrifice for strangers, of dedication to ideals that went beyond mere survival. They had taken their capacity for violence and channeled it into protection of the weak, defense of the innocent. During a joint training exercise, Zecthor found himself standing beside Commander Morrison, watching as mixed human and alien units practiced coordinated operations. "You know, Admiral, when we first met I was terrified," Morrison admitted. "Not of your ship or your weapons, but of what finding out we weren't alone would do to humanity. Would we rise to the challenge or would we fall apart?" "And what is your assessment now, Commander?" Zecthor asked. "I think we're doing what humans have always done. We're adapting, we're learning, and we're finding our place in something bigger than ourselves." Morrison paused, then added with a slight smile, "Though I'll admit, it's nice to know that the rest of the galaxy is a little bit afraid of us. Keeps things honest." Zecthor's mandibles clicked in amusement. "Commander, I think you will find that the galaxy is more than a little bit afraid of you, but we are also grateful." The attack on the frontier outpost, the one your people helped repel, it opened the Council's eyes. We had become comfortable, complacent. We forgot that peace must be defended, not simply wished for. Humanity has reminded us of that. You have reminded us that strength and compassion are not mutually exclusive, that the capacity for violence does not preclude the desire for peace. These are hard lessons, but necessary ones. The frontier incident Zecthar mentioned had indeed been a turning point. When the aggressive species known as the Krathni had attacked the Council outpost, expecting easy victory over what they perceived as soft, peaceful targets, they had instead encountered a joint human-Council defense force. The battle had lasted 6 hours. The Krathni, who had terrorized the frontier for decades with impunity, found themselves facing an enemy that matched their aggression but exceeded their tactical flexibility. Human commanders had coordinated Council forces with a precision and creativity that shocked both sides of the conflict. When the Krathni fleet finally retreated, they left behind a stunned respect for the force that had defeated them. More importantly, they left behind a message requesting diplomatic contact. The species that had refused all attempts at peaceful negotiation for generations suddenly wanted to talk. Director Coleman had led those negotiations personally. She had listened to the Krathni explain their perspective, their fear of the Council's expanding territory, their belief that aggression was the only language the universe understood. And then she had told them about human history, about countless wars and the slow, painful journey toward understanding that cooperation achieved more than conflict. She had not pretended that humanity had solved all its problems, had not claimed moral superiority. Instead, she had offered partnership, mutual respect, and the promise that strength could be used to protect rather than dominate. The Krathni had signed a non-aggression pact 3 weeks later. They were not yet ready to join the Council, but they were no longer actively opposing it. That alone was more progress than the Council had achieved in 50 years of attempted diplomacy. As Morrison and Zecthar watched the training exercise continue, a young human officer approached, saluting crisply. "Commander Morrison, Admiral Zecthar, we've received a priority message from Council Central Command. There's a situation developing in the Andros sector. An ancient automated defense system has activated and ships are going missing. They're requesting human assistance in the investigation." Morrison and Zecthar exchanged a glance, the kind of wordless communication that partners develop over time. "Prepare a joint task force," Morrison ordered. "Mix of human and Council personnel. We go in careful but ready for anything." As the officer hurried off to carry out orders, Zecthar's skin shifted to a thoughtful blue. "You know, Commander, there was a time not so long ago when the Council would have simply quarantined that sector and avoided the problem. We would have let those ancient machines claim their territory and written off any losses as acceptable casualties." "And now?" Morrison asked, though he already knew the answer. "Now we have learned from humanity that problems avoided do not disappear. They fester and grow until they can no longer be ignored. Better to face challenges when we choose to, with preparation and allies, than to be forced to face them later under worse circumstances." Morrison nodded slowly. "That's probably the nicest thing anyone's ever said about my species, Admiral. Essentially, that we're too stubborn to run away from problems." Zecthar's mandibles clicked in what Morrison had learned to recognize as genuine laughter. "Commander, I have studied your history extensively over the past months. Stubbornness may be humanity's most defining characteristic. Your species has faced extinction more times than most species have faced serious challenges, and each time you have refused to accept defeat. You have turned disasters into opportunities, setbacks into motivations, and obstacles into stepping stones. It is both inspiring and terrifying to witness. The galaxy is still learning what it means to have humans among the stars. I suspect we will be learning that lesson for a very long time." 3 days later, the Joint Task Force entered the Andros sector. What they found there would become the subject of countless reports, academic studies, and late-night conversations among military officers of every species. The ancient defense system was indeed active, a network of automated weapons platforms and hunter-killer drones built by a species that had vanished millions of years ago. The system was sophisticated, adaptive, and had claimed 17 ships in the past month alone. The Council forces wanted to retreat, to regroup and plan a careful campaign that might take months or years to execute safely. The human contingent wanted to understand the system, to learn its patterns and weaknesses. Everything has a weakness, Lieutenant Chen had argued during the planning session. We just need to find it. These machines are following programming that's millions of years old. They can't adapt to truly novel threats because their creators are long dead, but we can adapt. That's what we do best. What followed was a masterclass in human tactical thinking. Rather than try to fight or avoid the defense system, the human contingent studied it. They sent probes, analyzed attack patterns, mapped out the network's response protocols. They identified not just how the system worked, but why it worked that way, understanding the strategic thinking of beings dead for eons. And then they did something the ancient builders had never anticipated. They didn't try to destroy the system or bypass it. They communicated with it. Using a combination of mathematical proofs and carefully structured signals, the human team convinced the ancient AI that the threat it was designed to guard against no longer existed. They provided evidence of the passage of time, of the heat death of stars that had existed when the system was built, of the fundamental changes in the galactic landscape. It took 72 hours of continuous communication, but in the end, the defense system acknowledged the information and deactivated itself. 17 missing ships had been avenged not through violence but through understanding. The Galactic Council declared it a diplomatic and technical victory of the highest order. Human ingenuity had solved a problem that had seemed unsolvable, had turned a deadly threat into a historical curiosity worthy of study rather than a sector to be avoided. Back on Earth, in the quiet moments after returning from the Andros sector, Morrison found himself at a small ceremony honoring the crew of the Liberty. They had been the first to make contact with an alien species, the first to defend Earth from perceived threat, and the first to demonstrate humanity's place in the galactic community. As he stood before the assembled officers and dignitaries, Morrison thought about that first day, about the terror of seeing an alien ship appear in Earth orbit, about the split-second decision to defend his pilot, about everything that had followed. "We learned something important," he told the audience. "The galaxy thought we were legends, myths told to frighten the young. We thought we were alone. Both assumptions were wrong. We are real, we are here, and we are not alone. The galaxy fears us because we come from a hard world, because we are survivors and warriors. But fear is not the whole story. Respect, partnership, mutual understanding, these are also part of our relationship with the other species of the Council. We are dangerous, yes. We are capable of terrible things, that's true, but we are also capable of wonderful things. We can choose to be protectors rather than conquerors, partners rather than dominators, problem solvers rather than problem creators. The day the aliens learned humans were real was the day we learned we had a choice about what kind of humans we would be. I think we're making the right choice. I think we're becoming the humans the galaxy needs us to be." The applause was genuine and heartfelt. In the audience, Admiral Zekther stood with his fellow council representatives, his skin displaying colors of approval and hope. Later, in a private moment, Zekther approached Morrison with a data tablet. "I wanted to show you something," the Admiral said. "This is a new entry in the Council archives. It's about humans, but it's very different from the old warnings." Morrison took the tablet and read. "Humans are indeed dangerous. They are apex predators from a death world, survivors of an evolutionary crucible that would have extinguished most species. Their capabilities in combat are formidable, their reflexes exceptional, their tactical thinking revolutionary. But to see only the danger is to miss the complete picture. Humans are also capable of extraordinary compassion, of sacrifice for strangers, of dedication to ideals that transcend mere survival. They have taken the same qualities that make them dangerous and turned them toward protection of the weak and defense of the innocent. When working with humans, remember this. They are not monsters, they are not myths, they are not legends. They are people, complex and contradictory like all sentient beings. Treat them with respect, but also with understanding. Fear their capabilities, but trust their intentions. They are capable of being the galaxy's greatest threat or its greatest asset. The choice is ours, determined by how we choose to engage with them. Approach with suspicion and they will respond with caution. Approach with respect and partnership and they will respond in kind. The day we learned humans were real was also the day we learned what we could become with them as partners. The galaxy is better for their presence in it. Morrison looked up from the tablet, his eyes meeting Zecthor's multiple ones. Thank you, Admiral. This means more than you know. It is simply the truth, Commander. The galaxy has learned what humans are. Now we must continue learning what we can become together. That, I suspect, will be the real adventure. As the sun set over the ceremony, casting long shadows across the assembly, Morrison thought about the future. Humanity had taken its first steps into the larger galaxy. They had been feared, tested, and ultimately accepted. The ancient warnings about humans had been both right and wrong. Right about the danger, wrong about what that danger meant. Humanity was dangerous, but they were also necessary. The galaxy had been at peace for so long it had forgotten what peace cost, forgotten that security required vigilance, forgotten that problems avoided only grew larger. Humans remembered these things because humans had never had the luxury of forgetting them. Earth had taught its children hard lessons, and those lessons had prepared them for a larger stage. The day aliens learned humans were real was the day the galaxy changed forever. What came next would be determined by choices, by actions, by the slow building of trust between species. But Morrison was confident in one thing: humanity would face those challenges the same way they had always faced challenges. With determination, with ingenuity, with the refusal to accept defeat. They were dangerous, yes, but they were also ready. Ready to protect, ready to partner, ready to take their place among the stars. The galaxy had learned that humans were real. Now it was time for the galaxy to learn what humans could do when given the chance to prove themselves. And if the ancient warnings were any indication, what humans could do was extraordinary. The end.